Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing and two handheld gaming computers with Intel Tiger Lake processors with some pretty small differences and some pretty big differences. The biggest one, of course, being the size. So what we've got here is the GPD Win 3 and the ONEXPLAYER. Now, the ONEXPLAYER has an 8.4-inch 2560 by 1600 pixel display. The GPD Win 3 has a 5.5-inch 1280 by 720 pixel display, and you can almost fit the whole thing just in the screen area of the ONEXPLAYER. Weighs about 1.8 pounds, weighs about 1.4 pounds, and it's generally just, this is pretty small, easy to hold in your hands. You can sort of lift it and play it, without too much difficulty. This is a little bit heavier. It actually feels more comfortable in the hands, but puts a little bit more strain on your arms. And so it's handy that there is a kickstand that allows you to sort of prop it up. You can also sort of balance it on your lap or whatever and play the game holding it this way. This has a slide-up screen, which reveals a keyboard below. It's a capacitive touch keyboard. You can find more details in other videos that I've done. I don't love this keyboard, and I would almost prefer just to use an on-screen keyboard, which is what the ONEXPLAYER does, and even has a button that brings up the physical keyboard. Both of them have Intel Tiger Lake processors with Intel Iris Xe graphics. This starts with an 1165, a Core i7 1165 G7 processor, and is available with up to a Core i7 1185 G7 processor. This starts with a Core i5 1135 G7 chip. That's a mouthful, but basically this has a lower starting configuration, but they both have 16 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte of storage. This has a higher configuration, but you can configure them to basically have the same specs if you would like, which would be something like a Core i7 1165 G7, 16 gigs of RAM, and 512 or 1 terabyte of solid-state storage. The more portable model here does have some smaller features. So the buttons are a little bit smaller, take a little bit more getting used to if you're used to using sort of full-size Xbox or PlayStation controllers. These are a little bit closer to full-size, but it can also take a little bit more effort to sort of find your hand positions if you want to be able to reach everything at once. Whereas these are a little bit easier to make sure that sort of everything is where you want it to be. But because of the placement of the analog sticks, if you wanted to use the X, Y, A, B buttons, you might have to sort of grip it like this. It's a little bit different than this layout. In terms of physical size, let's put them side by side. You'll notice here that the ONEXPLAYER is a little bit thinner and it's flat, whereas this has sort of a bump by the shoulder buttons. They both have linear trigger buttons and clicky buttons, so you've got 4 overall shoulder keys. Put this on the other side, and you'll see how it is against the thinnest portion. And if we take a look at the back, you'll see they've both got these vents for intake and at the top for air output. Now there's a couple of extra buttons here. We've got volume up and down and a mute key here. Here we've got power and volume up and down. Here we have the power button, which is also a fingerprint sensor. We've got a fingerprint sensor here on the front. So a lot of the functions really are similar, but the size makes these two pretty different devices overall. In terms of performance, they both can play games reasonably well. Some games might actually play better at the default resolution of 1280 by 720, but you can, of course, always downscale the games if you want on the larger device. Another thing to note is that, let's go back to the desktop here. This has a default resolution setting of, or scaling of 100% DPI. This has a 250% DPI. So that's why everything looks very small and sharp here, but it doesn't look super small and sharp here. It would if you went ahead and changed those DPI settings. Another difference is that we've got a couple more dedicated buttons besides those volume and mute keys on the back there. We've got a select start button, we've got a back button, we've got an escaped desktop key, which comes in handy because there is no physical keyboard to do Alt-Tab or anything. You can press and hold that, and one of these keys over here will give you a screenshot, and the other one will give you the ability to open the task manager from any window. And then I can press and hold this button to enable mouse mode instead of touchscreen mode, and I can press it once to bring up an on-screen keyboard, and then I can press this button to enable turbo mode, which changes the TDP from 20 watts to 28 watts when you need an extra boost of power. So those are the specs. That was sort of a lot to get through here, but let's take a quick look at what it's like to actually game on the two of these devices. So I'm not going to do anything real detailed here, but we've got a nice large screen. Everything looks pretty good. Getting 50, 60 frames per second on this game. It's actually a lot better than I was getting earlier. Makes me wonder, did I adjust the settings? Oh yeah, so this is at 1280 by 800 resolution, which actually is pretty good for what I'm about to show you, because so we're getting around 50, 60 frames per second at 1280, which is similar to what we will be playing on when we play the same game over here. 50, 60 frames per second. Yeah, let's mute the other one. So now we got bottom firing speakers in front of instead of front firing speakers. But they sound pretty good. I think they're actually a little bit louder, perhaps. And a little bit more bass, which is surprising. Let's confirm that. We've got volumes just over 50 here. Let's go ahead and take that down. Let's unmute. Volume's at 60 or so. Yeah, I'd say the speakers are maybe a little bit louder and a little bit more bass heavy, at least for some basic things like this on the GPD Win 3. Neither of them are bad, but neither of them are necessarily great. I wouldn't want to listen to a lot of music on any of these speakers, but overall, they both play games reasonably well, particularly games that don't have super high demanding, don't need a discrete graphics card. So there you have it, a sort of quick overview of the GPD Win 3 and ONEXPLAYER. This is Brad Linder with lilliputiing.com. You can find more details at lilliputiing.com or check out the YouTube channel for more videos about each of these devices.